Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. Today we're actually taking a look at a Verge article, and surprise, surprise, the take is fairly indefensible. This time though, we're talking about comparing an Xbox to a PC. So let's take a look at the claim, and let's take a look at just why specifically the headline of this article is just really not good. Now, in case you missed the Xbox Series X announcement, which is supposed to be, or at least it looks like it's going to be, Xbox's sort of top-tier Xbox next holiday season when it actually launches, Microsoft did in fact announce that new Xbox. Now, they haven't said anything about the lower-tiered one that's believed to exist as well, so we're still kind of holding our breath on that front. But The Verge had an interesting take on this announcement, and I will link it down below in case you want to read the full text. But the biggest, most egregious part of it is the headline, which I'll get to in just a minute. Though I did want to point out a few things that The Verge did correctly look at, and something that I'm genuinely excited for console gamers. So the highlights of why console gamers should actually be excited about this console is a huge jump in CPU performance, up to about 4 times according to Microsoft themselves. So obviously moving to a new generation architecture would give us a really nice jump in CPU performance. So that's something to be extremely excited about if you're a console gamer. And then we're also supposed to be seeing 12 teraflops of GPU performance, which, although a really terrible metric of how well this thing is actually gonna game, with that type of performance, it should be a really solid piece of hardware, at least at launch. Now, it's yet to be seen what the price is going to be, so it's entirely possible that the price to performance just isn't there, but at least on paper, it looks like a fairly competent machine. In addition to just raw power, we're also getting NVMe storage. At least it looks like we're going to be getting that NVMe storage, so we're actually going to see consoles with high-speed storage, which, if we're very lucky, Microsoft will not solder that onto the actual motherboard of the system itself. It'll actually just make it an off-the-shelf M.2 drive, which would be fantastic for upgradability. And if we're extremely lucky, they would even do the same thing with the system RAM, but I don't see that happening at all. Now, where this article really bothers me is actually in the way that it gets you to click into the article itself, which is, of course, the title, which is the Xbox Series X is basically just a PC. Actually, I misspoke. The actual title is the Xbox Series X is basically a PC. I threw in the just there because I thought that would make sense, but apparently that's not the title they ran with, but the title they ran with still makes no sense, and there's a really simple reason why. When we look at what is a PC and what is not a PC, a basic PC, whether we're talking about a laptop or a desktop situation, the biggest characteristic of being on PC, especially when we're talking about gaming, is basically complete control over the software you're running. If you're a developer for a PC, you can release your game directly to people through possibly your own website. Maybe you develop your own launcher for Windows, or you could even develop it for Linux if you really wanted it to be on Linux. But the option is there, and that's really the whole crux of why the Xbox Series X, although a nice piece of hardware, at least it looks like it's going to be a nice piece of hardware, is just absolutely not a PC. Now, beside me, I have a PC that I put together recently. I'm actually really excited to show off to you. It's got some RGB bling going on, and that's just so it's a little easier to sell. We have an RX 480 in it. We have a Ryzen 1600. We have an SSD SATA-based M.2 drive in there, and then we also have a 1 terabyte hard drive. But the great thing about this system that you also can't do with an Xbox Series X is I can take any individual piece of hardware out of this thing and replace it with something completely different, and the system is still gonna work. Now, I fully understand this is something a little bit more exclusive to desktop PCs, especially DIY desktop PCs. As laptops, you can't just pull out different pieces and replace it completely with something completely else. But that is another characteristic of gaming on PCs that we do typically see. Now, again, laptop gamers aside, but if you're gaming on a desktop PC, you also have not only software control over your system, but you also have pretty much complete hardware control over what goes into your system. And the whole point of gaming on PC, at least to me, and the biggest draw to me, isn't even necessarily the exclusives that PC has that consoles don't typically get, especially if you're a real-time strategy player, but it's the control over the software and the hardware that you get, and that's just not something you're ever going to get on the Xbox. Now, I did already mention that if we're lucky, we'll get modular M.2 drives in the next Xbox, and hopefully even then the PlayStation 5, but I'm not really optimistic that that's going to happen. I think it would make more sense for Microsoft and Sony from a business perspective to just solder onto the motherboard, because I don't know how many people really buy a console with the full knowledge that they're going to have to upgrade the storage. And if they do want to upgrade storage, I do know several people that have actually just gotten an external hard drive and plugged it in that way to their Xbox Ones or PlayStation 4s. So I think that might be a route that people go with upgrading storage. So I don't necessarily expect off-the-shelf M.2 drives to appear in this next generation consoles. And if we were really lucky, the system memory would even be upgradable in these consoles. But again, that's not something at all that I would expect to see from these consoles, nor do I necessarily think it would be a good business decision by Microsoft and Sony, especially because on those consoles, a lot of times we're seeing razor-thin margins to begin with. We're seeing a lot of hardware that is specifically engineered to be that console, whereas in desktop PCs, the other nice thing, at least from development costs, and I'm getting my laptop over here giving me notifications, but from a cost perspective of development, everything is standardized. Everything's in a standard form factor. Like, this is a micro ATX case. Motherboard manufacturers will develop motherboards that are micro ATX on purpose with this standard in mind, whereas the consoles are developing everything for a brand new form factor every time they build a new console. Now, where I think The Verge is getting this idea that the Xbox is basically a PC, I think they're getting it from two factors. First of all, the Xbox Series X looks more like a PC than it does a typical console. Most consoles you sort of lay on their side, they fit into a nice little cubby in maybe your entertainment center or something like that, which is not gonna be the case, at least not in most entertainment centers, for this Xbox Series X. And the other side of it is the hardware power that we're seeing. We're seeing much more PC-like raw performance, at least on paper, out of the Xbox Series X, which we did not see with the Xbox One generation or the PlayStation 4. But just because you have the power, that does not make it a PC. And that is the big problem with that article, is while it does have some really nice features, it is absolutely not basically a PC. And if you're looking for the PC benefits of actually buying a computer and gaming on a computer, having that extra choice, often having cheaper games available to you, being able to play on any number of different platforms, then gaming PCs are still the way to go. But if you're a console gamer, there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about with buying an Xbox Series X, because frankly, it looks like a really solid piece of hardware and should deliver a humongous performance boost over this last generations of consoles, which I believe were extremely disappointing, at least from a performance perspective. So at least console gamers are getting a legitimately good piece of hardware in this system, at least on paper. Again, obviously, we won't really know for another year because these things aren't coming out till holiday 2020. But of course, I do want to hear from you guys. What do you think? First of all, is the Xbox Series X basically a PC? Judging from my audience, I'm basically guessing that's going to be a resounding no, but maybe you have a different opinion. And beyond that, what are your thoughts in general on the Xbox Series X, both for console gamers and for PC gamers? Let me know your thoughts down below. And of course, if you like the video and you want to see more like it, especially with these consoles starting to get announced and then later on next year launched, hit that like, share, subscribe button. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.